Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Lyoko Retrospectives, and today we're going to be discussing episode 79 of Code Lyoko, Bragging Rights. And in this episode, the group is going right back to the jungle lab. Essentially, they figure that basically after what happened in the last episode, the group thinks that they probably need to go back to the jungle lab and take care of it. Now, the pretense being that they already destroyed the barrier surrounding the supercomputer there, so odds are they should probably go back right away because they think, well, it's probably going to be a simple job. And I originally thought that was kind of like a dumb mindset to have because the force field that was protecting the supercomputer could easily be repaired. But then you have to remember that this is a lab in the middle of nowhere, and odds are that whatever Odd did to the force field probably shorted it out really bad, so it would take time to repair. So it kind of makes sense to strike while the iron is hot. Odds are they wouldn't get the force field up that quickly. So, yeah, that night the group goes to the replica to try and take out the supercomputer in the jungle lab. However, on the way there, a prominent plot point in this episode is that Odd's is kind of in the middle of it with Ulrich. Pretty much, Odd's bragging is getting to the point. Essentially, Odd and Ulrich have made a bet about Odd as a bragger. After Odd does a stunt in the gym class and humiliates Jim, he gets 4 hours detention. So Ulrich tells him that he got it because he was being a bragger and he kind of deserved it. And Odd got defensive and said, "No, I'm not a bragger. I'm confident in my abilities," or whatever. I don't remember what he said. Bottom line, he denies being a bragger, and Ulrich tells him, "Yes, you are." And so they make a bet. If Odd can go 24 hours without bragging about himself in any way, then Ulrich will give him his desserts for like 2 weeks. And likewise, if Odd doesn't end up bragging about himself at all, then the opposite will happen. Odd will have to give his desserts to Ulrich. So they make the bet, and that's just what Odd is at. As throughout the episode, he keeps trying to act humble and try and downplay his accomplishments, or at the very least he tries to brag about himself in subtle ways, so to speak. But bottom line, that's just what's going on with Odd. But in the meantime, the group the group goes to the replica, and they do get everything in order to go back to the lab. As they bring the ship in, moor it to a tower, Jeremy activates it and teleports two of them in. This time we have Ulrich and Yumi going in. And because they now know exactly where the lab is, Jeremy's able to teleport them right into the lab. Thankfully, this time Xana doesn't have any phantom scientists running around, so it's just the two of them in there. However, when they try to go into the lab where the supercomputer is, they can't get in. Because at this point the keypad that they would have to activate in order to get in, they still don't know the key, and since Aelita isn't here this time to use her powers to hack the pad, they're essentially locked out. Ulrich's response to this is just to smash the keypad with his katana, and that doesn't do a thing. All it does is just destroy the pad and permanently lock them out. As such, Jeremy decides that a backup plan is that they'll find where the power generator is and cut the power there to the door so they can go in. As such, Yumi stays behind to guard the supercomputer while Ulrich goes to look for the power. But it turns out they got a bit of a problem. Xana is aware of what they're doing, so he activates a tower on the replica. And what does he do? Well, remember how Odd and Aelita found those robotic spiders the last time they visited this lab? Yeah, it turns out that Xana had them created to essentially act as monsters in the real world. Like, remember how he de-virtualized the cankerlites and the crabs? This time it's just he's making monsters just straight up in the real world, and that's just kind of what I think it is, because as we saw, these spiders have the Xana insignia embedded in their bodies, so it would make sense. And considering how there's technology in them, it would make sense to have them be extensions of Xana. So yeah, Xana activates the tower and takes control of them and begins hunting both Yumi and Ulrich. Ultimately, Ulrich is fine. They mostly go after Yumi since she was the one guarding the supercomputer door. Meanwhile, Ulrich does manage to find the power grid, but unfortunately he can't make heads or tails of it. It's just the system's too complicated and there's no big red button that he needs to press. As such, Ulrich decides that he wants to try the smashy method again. Only Jeremy tells him, yeah, just hold on, I gotta think about this, which, fair enough, when he tried that, because, yeah, the door. But in the meantime, on Lyoko, Xana, of course, launches an attack on the Skid to try and get them, to try and stop their plan, and this time he sends 3 Hornets and William. Thankfully, Odd is able to lead the Hornets away and take them out, while Aelita fights William. But then once they get word that apparently that a tower has been activated, Aelita has to go take care of that, while Odd has to stay behind and deal with William. Unfortunately, William does manage to devirtualize Aelita, and while Odd is able to take care of William, there's still the problems of the lab. As ultimately Jeremy decides, just screw it, smash it, because ultimately he realizes if they smash the power grid, it could solve all their problems. Because if there's no power to the supercomputer, then they won't be able to make it. Then ultimately the replica will just fade away. The tower will go away. The spiders will be a non-threat. Everything will just be hunky-dory. But while that method does work in the beginning, it turns out that the lab has a backup power generator, and that immediately turns back on. And while the replica was in the process of being devirtualized, with the backup power generator online, that comes back in. That's when William devirtualized Aelita, because originally she held him off till the replica began to disappear. He almost fell into the digital sea, and then as it came back, William just climbed back up and ultimately just destroyed Aelita, which is what led to Odd taking William out. To make matters worse, Ulrich and Yumi end up getting cornered by the spiders, and we see that what happens when when they get destroyed in the real world through their phantom selves. They get sent right back to Lyoko, but they're knocked unconscious as after Yumi and Ulrich are destroyed by the spiders, they end up right back on the Skid, but they're unconscious, and unfortunately with Aelita being devirtualized, they don't really have a lot of options to deal with the supercomputer. As such, Odd, now being the last man standing, says, "How about you just send me?" And so while a little reluctant, Jeremy decides, okay, fine, and he sends him to the lab. As such, Odd manages to find where the backup power generator is, but unfortunately it's being guarded by a large group of those spider bots. And since Aelita's been devirtualized, there's not really anybody to deactivate the tower, so Odd just has to go in guns blazing. And you know what? He actually succeeds. He manages to take out each of the spider bots one by one through fancy gymnastics, laser arrows, and just being a complete show off until eventually all the spiders are taken care of, and all that's left is him and the backup power generator. As such, Odd uses his last laser arrow to destroy the backup power generator, and with that gone, the whole facility begins to shut down. The whole facility ends up losing power, and the supercomputer just completely shuts down. As a result, the lab is now useless. With the power generator smashed and the backup power generator blown up, essentially it's just now an empty fortress now. Because I'm kind of under the impression that the place was abandoned because there were scientists. Because while there were scientists in the last episode, they could have very easily have just been phantoms. Bottom line, though, the supercomputer stake is down, and so the replica begins to vanish. Odd manages to teleport back to Lyoko, and he managed to take the Skid and fly out of there before it gets destroyed, because while Odd was away, Xana did send a couple tarantulas to try and destroy the Skid with Ulrich and Yumi inside it. Side note, apparently if the Skid is destroyed while there are people in it, those people are just dead. News to me. But they managed to escape the replica just as it explodes. And yeah, it's thanks to Odd. And so by the end of the episode, we see Ulrich and Jeremy in the bathrooms as they're talking about Odd's accomplishments, and yeah, they actually are praising him because he fought William hand-to-hand on his own, took out all the spiders, and then destroyed it, and then by the end, as they're talking about it, Odd just jumps out of the shower and is just singing is just gloating about how he took the fastest shower. Of course, Jeremy and Ulrich are just giving him looks. But at this point, Odd's just kind of accepted. It's like, you know what, you're right, you're a bragger, take the desserts, I'm proud of it. And I think that's actually kind of I think that's kind of funny. A little stupid, but the fun kind of stupid. So I like that. So overall, yeah, I really like the episode. I like that it continues on from what happened in the last episode. As while they did lose in the last instance, they did still take still take solace in what they learned. And I like that. And again, while I initially thought that it may be a little presumptuous to strike again, thinking that what they did before is now permanent, again, it also makes sense to strike when they are, because, yeah, striking while the iron is hot is probably a good idea. They destroyed the force field, and while Xana could probably get it back up and running, it would take some time to get it repaired, so strike now before he can. Again, smart decision. On top of that, it is cool to see more of what Xana was doing there, as we see we see more of what the spiders are. And again, I think that they were just initially there as just a base guard. Like, if anybody snooped around in the lab, Xana could activate a tower, take control of the spiders, and send them after whoever was snooping around. In this case, when the Lyoko group arrives at the lab, he sent the spiders directly after them, like he usually sends the monsters to guard a tower whenever he activates it. So that I think is nice. I'd like seeing more of that expanded, and it is cool seeing the other members of the Lyoko group being able to have their abilities in the real world. Seeing Ulrich and Yumi using their powers in the real world. Which, side note, Yumi looks really pale in the real world with her Lyoko design. I know it's supposed to be like a geisha type of thing. It's just that you never really notice it till it's actually in the 2D animation, because her skin tone on Lyoko is a lot different than her skin tone in the real world. So it's just noticeable, is all I'm saying. But of course, seeing the spiders as a more active force is creepy. I hate spiders. I just do. And of course, the stuff with Odd. It's not annoying, actually. It's actually kind of funny. It's like, for all intents and purposes, this should be an annoying story. Just Odd trying not to be a braggart, but he's actually good. The episode does showcase this matches so well with Odd's personality. Of course he'd be a braggart. He would get embarrassed if he was, but at the same time, I do like that by the end of the episode, it is something he's proud of. Because he does have the skill to back it up. He doesn't try to downplay it, because he actually does have that skill, and he doesn't. And while he does build himself up a lot, it's Odd. Odd is the type of person who, while building himself up, would never use those abilities to shove someone down unless he felt they deserved it. Or if he was just being a kid. Like in the beginning of the episode, back when they were in with Jim and ultimately Nicholas. Of course, Jim always sets himself up for failure, as they had to do an exercise over a springboard, and Jim wound up mucking it up, even though just earlier he said you had to be an idiot to screw this up. So of course, well, to be fair, Nicholas was the one leading the charge in that. But then when Nicholas doesn't even make it that far, Odd begins giving him shade, and so Jim tries to put Odd in his place by saying, well, then you do it. And Odd just does it successfully. He just jumps over them. He does it well. He jumps over it perfectly. Does a handstand on the thing, and then just jumps off like an Olympic athlete, which I think makes sense considering all the fighting that the group does on Lyoko. Of course, shit like that would be like muscle memory at this point. So of course he'd be able to pull that off. And while what he did was a little arrogant, he probably did deserve that detention. At the same time, when he tries to build himself up on Lyoko, he's not wrong. He's not trying when he stays behind to deal with when Yumi and Ulrich are in the jungle base trying to try and destroy the supercomputer, and Odd and Eileen are the only ones left. Odd, of course, says that it will be an easy job. He just has to take care of the Hornets. And at first it looks like it's bragging. He's like, no, it's just facts. And it's true. He's able to successfully take out the Hornets one by one with little interference. And he managed to take out two, and then the third one disappears because the replica begins to destabilize for the first time. So things are going well. And then, of course, he ends up fighting William hand to hand, and it's clear. And you actually do, and I like seeing him in action. He actually is being smart, evasive, and during the battle, you actually see him taking note of William's stance, looking for any little weaknesses. Like during the battle, when William grabs his Buster Sword, William spreads his legs out wide, and Odd uses that as an opportunity to dive beneath his legs to try and get an attack in or avoid another attack. It's smart. He's actually you see him being evasive and smart, and it doesn't really need much development in that regard, because it's just showcasing that maybe Odd it does deserve to brag himself up a little, because he does have the skill to back it up, and we know Odd. He's not a jerk. Okay, maybe he's a little bit of a jerk, but never to the point where it's invasive or just a little annoying. I mean, okay, he can be a little annoying, but we know Odd, and we know he's a good guy. And when he actually, and in this case, when he's bragging up his skills, it's not in the sense of he's being arrogant. It's just him saying, "I can do that. I'm great at that sort of thing," and he's always doing it for the sake of others. And sometimes he can, like, only one instance in this episode did we see him push it maybe a little too far with Jim, and then maybe the shower thing, but by that point you could say he deserved it, considering everything he did in the episode. But again, his skills are shown. He took William down one-on-one. He got to the factory and took out a whole horde of those spiders by going Leroy Jenkins on their asses and shooting enough well-timed laser arrows. Hell, he took out the last spider by taking out the one before it, and then when the last one tried making a jump at him, all he did was just step aside and it smashed when it landed on the ground. That's smart, and it's skillful, and it's actually kind of nice when he's fighting evil, and he's not wrong. And he's not being and while he is showing off, it's not to the point where it's annoying. Okay, maybe a little, but not to the point where it gets grating. It feels justified, and at the end, since we know Odd, we know that he's just a good guy, and we know he's a good guy, and he's only bragging himself up to show how useful he is, not to try and talk himself down, which is actually a nice improvement, maybe from the earlier episode when he lamented how he didn't have any special abilities on Lyoko beyond his shield, which I like that. So seeing Odd be a braggart in this episode, it's actually not bad. It fits in his character, and while it is a little annoying, it's also kind of it's never to the point where it gets grating, and it is kind of nice seeing him actually use those skills he brags up to effect to actually help others, and by the end, he is proud of being a braggart. He's like, you know what? Yeah, I am a braggart. So what? I'm proud of that. You get your victory. I'm just gonna admire my muscles in the mirror. So, I like that. I like seeing that. It's some nice, good character stuff, and it definitely helps and it's just fun to watch. It's not it's not annoying, it's not invasive, it actually fits into the plot well, it's really nice. And I do like and I like that it ultimately does tie into them finally to actually destroying the first replica. So, yeah, I like that. It was fun to watch, so, yeah, that's about it. Thank you for watching. Overall, just a good episode. Cool, good, some really good character stuff with Odd. They took down the replica, saw more of the spider, so, yeah, that's about it. Thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson, and I'll see you next week. Take care.